Hey, podcast listeners. Tired of ads barging into your favorite news podcast? Good news. With Amazon Music, you have access to the largest catalog of ad-free top podcasts included with your Prime membership. Stay up to date on everything newsworthy by downloading the Amazon Music app for free or go to amazon.com/ad-free news. That's amazon.com/ad-free news to catch up on the latest episodes without the ads.
The mighty and resilient Merrimack River, carving through the communities of our great region. My name is Linda Lorden, proud president of Merrimack County Savings Bank. And like the river that serves as our namesake, we're a constant yet ever-changing presence. Because to us, it's bigger than banking. It's about powering communities and putting people first. It's about knowing where you came from and where you're going. That's Merrimack style. Visit us at themerrimack.com.
Hey, podcast listeners. Tired of ads barging into your favorite news podcast? Good news. With Amazon Music, you have access to the largest catalog of ad-free top podcasts included with your Prime membership. Stay up to date on everything newsworthy by downloading the Amazon Music app for free or go to amazon.com/ad-free news. That's amazon.com/ad-free news to catch up on the latest episodes without the ads.
To have a good harvest, one must plant good seeds and must also use the right kind of fertilizer. The carrots have grown large and firm. How good they will taste.
Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Backyard Gardens podcast. I am your host, Ben, and I'm with Batavia. No nicknames today, just straight up. This is a serious talk. We have to help everybody. We have to we have to talk you off the ledge. Okay? It is seed buying season. That's right. And we are here. We're going to give you a seed what is this supposed to be called? A seed buying guide. For some reason that's a tongue twister for me. I will tell you this, and you fill me in afterwards, Batavia. Do you wish that you had some guidance when you started buying seeds in the beginning?
Well, I absolutely do. I remember, and we got this question years ago more often, like, where do you buy seeds from? And I'll see this on my YouTube channel every now and again, like, where'd you get a particular seed from? But yeah, I was scrubbing the internet trying to figure out like what, where and how many and how and why and all of that. So it would have been nice to have a condensed episode that gives me specific instructions and guidance.
Yeah, I don't know if we're going to give you specific instructions. I mean, let's be straight. It's a personal choice, and everybody's going to do their thing. I will tell you that there's a couple things that I went through, and I know I wasted a lot of money, and there's things I didn't realize either. And there's an addiction to it. There's an absolute addiction to buying seeds. Would you not agree?
I'm in rehab, so yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, I think I've broken my addiction finally. It took me a long time. And I see it every spring. I mean, obviously we're way ahead, but I see it every spring, and it's like a running joke amongst gardeners and homesteaders about what seeds they got and how they didn't need them, all that good stuff. But what I realized is, I was getting a lot of seeds and I was throwing a lot away, and I wasn't happy with what I was growing either. That was really the big issue.
Yeah, I think that, and this is probably, if you go back now 4 or 5 years, back to the pandemic years, just the rush in all things gardening.
Yeah.
So I think if you go prior to the pandemic years, just generally social media, the more exposure we get to different things people are growing in different areas, and the different areas are kind of in fine print, because that wasn't something that I was paying close attention to, and that absolutely does matter. So kind of all of that exposure versus what's at your local, five and dime store. Look at me dating myself. Your local home improvement store. Like, the things you were seeing people were producing online were way beyond that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not a coincidence that this episode's coming out, because we are recording this before you're hearing it, obviously. But the seeds for next year as of this point, they should be in the shop. So check them out. The link is below. It's free shipping on $35 or more. We have all kinds of varieties for every season now. So we are like fully operational at this point. I will say this too, and I alluded to this, the quantity of seed that you get says a lot. And we were just packaging some tomato seeds the other day. And the way we do it, just so you guys know, is, I mean, they're packaged by weight, right? You don't count seeds or anything like that. You package them by weight. And I was looking at other people and what they were selling. And I mean, truth be told, I was looking at some of the seed packets that I had purchased. Mm-hmm. And I remember last year opening a seed pack and being like, man, there is not a lot of seeds in here. So what we ended up doing is we ended up packaging 5 times the amount that we got in the other seeds, just to kind of, because I mean, look, let's be straight. It's a seed. You got to have enough to get through your garden. And the goal really is to have enough for the next year. Mm-hmm. You know, there's a reason why we have seed boxes, because seed boxes, you know, you store seeds from year to year. So it really helps. But that's what we've got going on here. So check us out. The link is below for that for sure. And get yourself that. And then there's a discount code as well. You ready for the discount code, Batavia? Mm-hmm. The discount code is YBBB for Young Ben and Batavia the Botanical. I gave y'all a hint not too long ago. So get yourself a discount and get some seeds. But even if you don't buy seeds from us, no worries. We're not upset. But we do want you to grow the right kind of seeds. And we want you to get, you know, as we said in a previous episode, this is planting season. You know, this is like garden season 2.0. And this is where the nitty gritty really happens. So where do you want to start with this, Batavia? Because we kind of did not really discuss. I saw something flash up on the screen from Leonard.
Well, I mean, yeah. I think that we need some level of structure to the episode, right? And I think that there's some of the things we say repeatedly in episodes, like grow what you like, grow what you plan on eating, you and your family are going to eat. And so I think that kind of that's a basis, right? So we get seed catalogs, some of us still. We see seed catalogs online, people that sell seeds online. You know, in some cases, there are pages and pages and pages of seeds. I found myself previously kind of just scrolling and thumbing through like it was the Sears, you know, wish book catalog from back in the 80s, you know, and that kind of creates this.
You're so old.
I know. Well, yeah. It's a blessing, I'm telling you. But it creates this, anything could get into my cart. You know, what's out there? So I think starting with a list of vegetables, herbs, flowers, simply jotting down. It doesn't have to be your full 100% accurate. You're not going to shop outside of this list, but just some framework of where you want to start when it comes to buying seeds. And this isn't just saying you're a brand new gardener. This is just in general. When you think about what you're growing next year, start with a list, because in some cases I have things I want to be growing next year that I have seeds for, but I'm robbing Peter to pay Paul in the episode. How viable are those seeds still?
Well,
question mark.
You know, I actually did one step earlier than that last year. I inventoried my seeds. That was the first time I had done such a thing. And I mean, I did kind of like you did. I went through, and first of all, I pulled out any seed that was really old. Yeah. I said, you know what? This seed's 5 years old. And and what happened is I looked at my pile and I was like, why do I have seeds, like this pile of seed packets that are so old? Now, the truth moment is I did have some people send me some seeds originally. You know, from time to time, it's actually not as often as you think. And we get people that send us stuff. And I actually don't like that because I don't get to choose. You know, like I got a stack of seeds one time. I didn't get a choice in not a single one of them. And so they just kind of sat and went bad. And, you know, I gave them to some people and stuff like that. But, you know, I started by getting rid of all of that. And then I went and I sat down and I looked at it and I said, well, what seeds do I actually like? Because as I've gotten a little bit long in the tooth in my gardening career, I've started really playing around with varieties more. I know what vegetables I want to grow for the most part. Like there's not, as far as I know, there's not a lot of new vegetables coming into my garden, but there's a lot of new varieties. And so I was going through and looking at them and saying, well, like, hey, this variety is not good, and I made another pile, and I was able to really dwindle down my seed stock dramatically, which made me feel good because I kind of got a fresh slate. Then I made the list like you did, was like, what do I want to grow? And then go through there. But the problem is when you go to some of the seed catalogs, there's so many choices. And some people will mislead you. No names mentioned, Baker's Creek. And then some people, are very clear about what they grow and, understanding what heat tolerant is, disease tolerance, pest tolerance, and all that stuff, and what you want to deal with. So there's a lot to this.
Yeah, I think I think the inventory of your seeds is super important. So I kind of do that by, at the end of the season, I've pulled seeds out of their little, packaging, meaning like the seed packets, so many times. Like I basically organize the seeds. Now, I can be persuaded. So there's no right or wrong, whether you inventory your seeds before, then make your list, or make your list and then inventory, organize your seeds. Organizing and inventorying is technically something that's different, but I can be persuaded. So if I start sifting through my seeds, my eyes are going to get big and I'm going to have I didn't get a chance to grow that. Oh, I'm interested. So then when I start to make my list, all of those seed dreams are going to be floating around in my head. And it's very possible that some things are going to make it on my list that just wouldn't have otherwise. So again, that's me and that's my confession. But I think taking, account of what you want and what you have is just a critical first step.
I didn't know we were making confessions today.
I didn't either, but it just kind of
came out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm guilty of rebuying the same variety of seed that I'd had 3/4 of a pack of seeds. And then I'm like, I can't wait to go. I'm like, oh, wait, now I've got 2 packs of this. I've done that so many times. And it's really disheartening because it's one of those things that it's like, you just wasted it. You know what I mean? Let's be honest. Like in our tomato seed packs, we should have enough seeds for you to grow for 2 or 3 years in a regular sized garden. You shouldn't have to buy those seeds. And then on top of that, if you have the inkling to save any seeds or anything like that, it's just, it can spin out of control really fast. So, inventory and organizing, I don't think that they're the same, but I think that they have the same benefit.
Hey, podcast listeners. Tired of ads barging into your favorite news podcasts? Good news. With Amazon Music, you have access to the largest catalog of ad-free top podcasts included with your Prime membership. Stay up to date on everything newsworthy by downloading the Amazon Music app for free or go to amazon.com/ad-free news. That's amazon.com/ad-free news to catch up on the latest episodes without the ads.
Yeah, I do want to comment really quickly because I found myself in this bind, having multiple packages of the same plant, same exact, like from the same company, same, vegetables, same variety, all of that. Right. And then I'm forced to make the decision on, do I sow 2021 package seeds or 2024 package seeds? Yeah. And, the conservative part of me says get through first in, first out, get through the old. But then it's your window is short. Go with what's more probable to germinate. Yeah. And so here I am now, again, still pushing back 2020 seeds. I admire your just toss it out, that ability. I was talking about yesterday. I'm like, it's going to be 30 years from now and I'm going to realize how much time I wasted on. That's a good box. I bet I could reuse that box. I'm going to put that box somewhere. I'm going to store this thing here and never getting back to it. Or the one time I actually get back to it and say, this is why I save all of this stuff.
Well, I get to a point in my life, and this happened probably about 10 years ago, where I just get to a point, I'm like, I'm done. I'm absolutely done. I'm done dancing around it. I got to get rid of it. And it really does hurt to throw stuff out. But the way I look at it is, look, I'm not going to make this mistake again. Like, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do this and I'm going to throw it out, but I'm not going to do it again. And I'm pretty good about it. And it's just something that it's like, you got to flex that muscle every once in a while. Which I have a question. Can men have menopause?
I mean,
because I'm like having a hot flash or something right now. I'm dying over here.
Well, you have a shirt, a flannel. Like your body
hasn't. It's the first time I've worn long sleeves.
Yeah, your body hasn't gotten used to all of the clothing that you're transitioning into now. So no, you're not going to get menopause. It
was 75 degrees 2 days ago at night, and it was 46 this morning when I woke up. Maybe that's the problem. I don't know, but I was like, damn, I'm getting a hot flash. So anyways, so yeah, there's that. And then it's getting down to the type of seeds. And really what we need to talk about, we need to spend a little bit of time on the heirloom and hybrid portion of this. What direction do you want to go? And why do you want to go that direction? That's the really important part. I didn't realize what a hybrid seed was for a long time, and I avoided them like the absolute plague. And I hate that I did that, because I could have been expanding in a different direction a lot earlier than I have been.
Yeah, I think when I first heard of heirloom seeds, I very quickly understood what they were. But when I talk about, it's definitely in the last 6 years or so, 6 or 7 years is when I heard of and understood what heirloom seeds were. And I think, we're not going to talk about this that much here. This is me telling you and the audience, but my approach to seeds has shifted greatly in the last, I guess probably since we've been doing this podcast, right? No, buddy, no credit to you.
None needed.
Not this time. But it's the timing has aligned with the number of years I've been growing more in different things. Right. So remember the front yard garden was launched in 2019, right? And so that was a time where I doubled basically my growing space. And you can say that what I was growing, the amount that I was growing, number of varieties, like all of that. So these last X years, whatever that quick math is, 6 years, these last 6 years, I have unintentionally gained some experience that absolutely influences how I look at seeds, buy seeds, use seeds. Yeah. I put like 6 seeds in a little bitty container. Who is this person?
Yeah.
I mean, it was like, baby leaf lettuce, but
Yeah. The complexity, it comes into when you start saving seeds. Mm-hmm. And I do want to visit that a little bit, because there's an organizational thing that goes with that. But when you do the heirloom, like when I first read about heirloom, I instantly fell in love. Mm-hmm. I mean, look, it's exactly what I like about gardening. It's the old varieties, it's the old techniques. It just screamed to me like, this is what I want to grow. Mm-hmm. This is what I want to do. And as I started progressing and getting further and further along into my gardening journey, and I was starting to test out other varieties and, stuff that was a little bit more difficult to grow, like Brussels sprouts, for instance. And I decided like, hey, I need a little bit of a crutch. I need some help. And the only way that I was really going to get help is if I kind of went down the hybrid route. Now, I will say this, like I do like everything else. I do a mixture. If I want to save the seed, I absolutely am going to do an heirloom. But if I don't really care about saving the seed, like for instance, cabbage, I'm not going to save the seed from cabbage. Then I just go hybrid if I can, because it just makes it easier for me. I get a little bit of help from it. It may be a little bit faster. It may have a disease resistance, fungus resistance, something like that. So I will take that and embrace it. And that has really helped me in my journey. And I feel like every time we talk about this, we have to say this. Hybrid seeds are not genetically modified seeds. End story. That's all. There is no such. It's just it's the way it's bred, and the traits from the parent plants are the pollen to the flower, and then the child plant carries on the traits into the next one. So it is not a genetically modified seed. Up until recently, there was no genetically modified seeds. So now we have to be on the lookout for it. But hybrids are not genetically modified. So now that's there, you feel safe knowing that you are not really struggling with that. I'm getting a word here that there's a little bit of a delay. So if we start talking over each other, that's why.
Yeah. And I lost the last bit of the chat. So I originally had thoughts around, I am focusing on buying heirloom seeds because I am focused on saving seeds. And I want to kind of start with, I don't want a garbage in, garbage out situation, right? And so that was the...
Wait, what do you mean garbage in, garbage out?
So that was a bit of the short-sightedness around what hybrid seeds were and how they can be used in your garden. And so I'll be frank, I moved away from the idea of starting with and trying to limit myself to buy only heirloom seeds, because the things that I want to save seeds from, like I don't do a lot of seed saving in this space and stage in my garden. And the things that I have saved that have been hybrid have grown from my account just fine. Yeah. Right. Like I literally have this is the first year that I felt like my Aldi grocery store peppers. So bought some sweet peppers, bullhorn like sweet peppers from a grocery store, saved the seed and planted them. This is the first year where they didn't seem to do as well. And so I don't know if again, it's the hybrid of it all, which I'm assuming that the seeds that I was looking for, buying, I'm assuming that the ones that I got from the grocery store, the peppers themselves were grown from hybrid seeds. I could be wrong. And so then how many years have I grown them? I'm not sure. All of that said, it could have been just an off year for them. So with the idea of I'm saving less seeds, some of the seeds that I have saved and grown, I've saved tomato seeds from hybrids and they've grown just fine the next year. I just didn't put the energy into focusing on only heirlooms. And the second, probably larger reason is there's so many other varieties that are hybrids. I know that's the trap. And things that I have interest in growing. So right. I just didn't want to be in a position where I'm saying I'm not growing this because I may want to save seeds and I won't be able to save seeds, which, of course, again, I've just walked through, you can, but it's not the most optimal version of seeds to save. So anywho, all of that said, I like the idea. I like heirlooms. I like the consistency. But if it's not an heirloom and I have an interest in growing it, I'm still growing it. Well,
the whole thing with a hybrid is it could produce what you want, or it could revert to its parent traits, one of the parent traits. A genetically modified seed, if you save it, will be sterile, generally speaking. So, and not to mention it's technically illegal, but I mean, come get me. You know what I mean? Like if I'm growing it, I'm not signing any contracts to buy seeds or anything like that. So, so in our shop, we're, if I would say 95%, if not 100% heirloom off the top of my head. And the only reason why we did that is because we know that people like to save seeds. And we want you to be able to save the seed. Not to mention, we try to keep our prices the same across the board, and hybrids are more expensive for obvious reasons. There's technology that goes into that and time that goes into those hybrid seeds. So it just depends on what is up to you. But if you're trying to grow something, i.e. me growing Brussels sprouts, and you're having a hard time, explore the hybrid route. You know what I mean? Explore it and don't be scared of it and embrace it and think, the way I'm looking at it is I would like to one day try an heirloom Brussels sprout, but I need to really get a couple years of like, I grew this, I harvested it under my belt before I really start doing anything different. So just keep that in consideration. Excuse me. And then the next thing is, I can't stress this enough. Sit back and look at your climate before you think about what you're going to plant and then decide, okay? Not all gardens are created alike. Not all areas can grow whatever they want. And embrace that and work through that, and you're going to have a better garden.
Like hard stop. So
I did stop hard.
Yeah. So there's some things that, and it's not every single thing. There's some things that I'm looking at my okra, because you'll get this like right at the start of November. So we're still in October and I still have okra in. And I don't know where we'll talk about this. I don't know if it'll be over on YouTube under Be Better Garden. I don't know if it'll be here on the Backyard Gardens podcast or both.
Well, clearly it's about to happen.
Yeah. There's life things that have happened this season that have just changed my interaction with the garden. And kind of, I won't say changed my outlook necessarily, but I've had enough time and space to kind of really observe things that I don't always observe. And I'm looking at the performance of something like okra in October and saying, like it sounds good that, I have okra, but so I say that because okra is a good example. There's some okra plants that have been designed to grow better just all around versus a heat loving crop like okra that just generally speaking are going to grow better in young Ben's garden than they will in mine. Yeah. Like period, right? Just based on his weather versus, it's summer, but how hot is it really? So yeah, I mean, I think that's something that, where you live and what you're growing absolutely matter.
I wouldn't know. I didn't grow okra this year. Yeah. I wish I would have. I'm kicking myself because it's one of those crops that will continue to produce into the fall. You know what I mean? But you live and learn. Yeah. I think it's important to try to push the limits as well, because you never know what you're going to get. I do that. Batavia does it. We know how I feel about her growing sweet potatoes. But again, she's happy doing it. She has a space for it, and it's working for her. Did you do the harvest?
For the sweet potatoes, as of this recording, no, not yet. Yeah.
So, we are kind of back to back on that. Since we did the recording, our recordings are not spaced out a week apart. Sometimes we do two a week or something. But I was just curious. I really want to know how you did this year.
Me too.
And it's one of those things where I've said this before. You can really, if you embrace the right kind of crops in your garden, you can really flourish a lot. And I mean, there's multiple camps in gardening. There's I want to produce everything for my family, and there's I just want to produce as much as I can, and then there's I just want to have fun. And if you're in the middle, like there, and for instance, let's say you can't grow sweet potatoes. First thing that popped in my head, and you can grow everything else. You can still go to the store and buy sweet potatoes right now, so it's not a big, huge deal, but you could get so much more out of your garden. So it's really just comes down to like what your climate will lend you, which kind of goes in but definitely goes into like how many growing days do you have in your season, right? But you can't just look at the number. You can't just look at it and say, I have 193 frost-free days, go. Because out of those 193 frost days, the days where the nights are above 50 for some of these plants could be, 100. Well, that starts narrowing it down even more.
Yeah, this is where like data can help. There's data, my favorite website, guys and gals, Past Weather, that's tied to timeanddate.com. So, Past Weather, Chicago, Illinois, because I go to the site often, I'm sure we'll bring up timeanddate.com and kind of a sub site where I can look back to see, all right, I have 198 days of frost-free weather. approximately, right? Expected frost-free weather. If I start looking at the front end and the back end of those days, how many of those days are under 50, right? To Ben's point there. And this is where I think I am just fortunate that I've had the experience of it, like actually remembering growing in October, and then I have the data to back it up. Because I really don't want to get more, like, calculate more than that. So what do your pepper plants look like in October or early November if you have a later average first frost date, if your frost date moves into November or something? What do those pepper plants really look like? What do those tomato plants really look like? What do your, cabbage plants look like? What do your kale plants look like? Because we're also now getting into daylight hours, regardless of what your temperatures are too.
Yeah.
So there's that bit of it as well. So that's why I say, like, having the experience of, oh, this is what these plants in this garden bed look like and produced, around this time of year, combined with, let me go back and see what the temperatures were like. I'm still sitting in my frost-free time period, but what was the weather really like? So I think all of those things combined help influence kind of what you're growing in the spring versus what you're growing in the fall, as a good example.
Have you ever heard of the Köppen-Geiger climate zone?
The who guy?
I take that as a no. So I just was looking up my frost-free days, how many there are. I could do the math, but I don't feel like doing it. Anyways, I came up and it's got the Köppen-Geiger climate zone, which I am in CFA, humid subtropical climate. Just hanging with me here. Mm-hmm. And then heat zone days. So I have 61 to 90 days over 86 degrees Fahrenheit. So I found this information on plantmaps.com. So do you want me to look you up? Is that what that is?
Yeah, look up mine. And you pull the thought out of my head, but I mean, you're not a magician, because it kind of, based on what we do together, I think it's natural. Like, I was going to say, hey, do you know about, a place where you could talk about your average warm days and what they define as warm? So, although you threw me for a loop originally, I'm super excited about.
So for site. You're, I just like saying the name now, Köppen-Geiger climate zone is DFA, humid continental hot summers. You're currently in an exceptional drought, and you are rarely over 86 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah.
So, and then there's an eco region, which I don't know what that is.
How many of the hot days do I get?
It doesn't. It says rare. There's no range.
Dang.
So as an average, you rarely get. So if you just think about that right there. I've actually just fallen in love with that. That tells me a lot. Like when you start thinking about stuff to grow. So for instance, look, you look disgusted.
Like the thing that made me fall for him. It's like, the average days that he gave you. And then it's like, now we're on the second date. And it's like, you are not who you appeared to be last week.
You got catfish.
There's value. I don't want to discount the idea of not typically above 86 degrees, because this is the thing you and I have been talking about. Like, why, in part, 86 is still pretty warm for collards, but I'm able to grow collards in the summer. Why growing sweet potatoes is a little, like, kind of what my production is going to be is a little bit of a challenge. I'm not often hitting above 90. It's a rarity. We talk about this.
Yeah. I thought you were going to say
validation there, but
I thought you were going to say it was a little bit of a stretch. Because, I was just thinking, you've seen the Seminole pumpkin in my garden, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. I mean, it's stunning at best.
At the UPS Store, we know being a small business owner means holiday time is still go time. Still get those orders shipped time. And still re-up on stamps and supplies time. That's why this upcoming holiday, while others close up shop, we'll be open. And happy to help you keep being unstoppable. Come into your local store today. Most locations are independently owned. Product, services, pricing, and hours of operation may vary. See Center for details. The UPS Store. Be unstoppable.
Hey, podcast listeners. Tired of ads barging into your favorite news podcasts? Good news. With Amazon Music, you have access to the largest catalog of ad-free top podcasts included with your Prime membership. Stay up to date on everything newsworthy by downloading the Amazon Music app for free or go to amazon.com/ad-free news. That's amazon.com/ad-free news to catch up on the latest episodes without the ads.
I would venture to say that it would not do that in your space because it loves the heat, right? Our count now is 60 pumpkins off of that one plant. So
I don't remember if we said this exact thing a couple episodes ago, but that is in this moment, because I don't know how many more years I'll be in this space, but I just don't feel like this home is my forever home. In this moment, I had a vision of a space where I could just have vines growing, because it's a beautiful thing, like that Seminole pumpkin plant, right? It's a single plant.
It's one plant. It's a pain in the ass, though. And
yeah, I remember saying more recently, I could never grow in that way. Like, where would those vines go? And in this moment, it was a little bit whimsical of there'll be a time where I could just walk along the patch with my cup of coffee. But even if the land is in Chicago, I'm going to tend to agree with you. I don't think that would be necessarily the experience.
So while we're looking at heat zone days, give me one more place you're curious about.
Let's go a Minnesota zip code. I bet it's going to say nasty things about them. No, let's go California. We had a lot of listeners in California.
Okay, pick a place.
San Diego, which is on my list of relocation.
So I already did San Diego. Rare over 86 and rare frost. So.
All right, Los Angeles.
L.A.?
Yeah. I don't know anyone in L.A.
It's warm there, too. It's warm there, too.
Does it give you the
I
number?
don't know how to spell Los Angeles, apparently.
LOS space.
Yeah, no frost, no frost. 1 to 7 days over 86 degrees. So let's go a little bit, something that would be a nice mixture. We'll do where I used to live. I actually remember the zip code. 2360. Plymouth, Massachusetts. Because I can compare how I grew in the past. Rare over 86 makes sense. Humid continental, mild summer, wet all year. Yeah, that makes sense. So that explains why I was able to do things all through, greens and stuff like that, mostly through the summer. I remember there being a month when there was, a little bit of warm weather, but overall it was not that hot.
Yeah. So I think generally speaking, we could be ordering the same seeds, right? And have a different experience depending on the vegetable and depending on our climate. It doesn't mean everything will produce absolutely completely different, but weather matters.
Here's a good one. I know everybody's listening, look up my space. They're probably screaming at the radio right now. San Antonio, Texas. Humid subtropical climate from the Copenhagen climate zone. Love saying it. They're in an exceptional drought, and they have 121 to 150 days over 86 degrees.
Wow.
So, you can start to see as we go through different varieties, which we're going to fold in varieties now, you can start to see where something like this can really help. If you want to grow something everybody wants to grow an orange tree. Well, you're going to struggle. So we can find different things to do. Seminole pumpkin here, a regular pumpkin at your house, or butternut squash is more comparable, even though the name pumpkin's not in it. You can use all of that to your advantage and all of that data.
And then how good or I don't want to say bad, what these veggies taste like too,
Yeah.
How much water, how little water impacts a lot of some of the things we're growing. A lot of some of the things, you guys know what I mean. So, I think that's, I don't want to deter anyone from not buying a thing because of their weather, but it's like go into it with eyes wide open.
Yeah. What? Great movie, by the way. Great movie. You ever seen it?
No. What movie?
Eyes Wide Open.
Oh, yeah. Oh, it's been so long.
Yeah, dude, it's super weird. I love cult stuff. Sorry. Anyways, let's move on. I do not want to get wrapped up going down that path because I will talk about it for hours. So days to maturity factors into this. So you get frost days, you get frost-free days, you get temperature ranges, and then you start using your days of maturity. How long will it take? And this is where you start. This is what makes another one of the things I really like about gardening is you start to use your personal experience and your knowledge with plants, and then you factor in the hard data behind it, right? So, like white potatoes. There's a lot of places that have just finished their white potato harvest for the year, right? Especially like if you go up north. I mean, let me put it in perspective for you. My white potato harvest is over in May. So, there's a big difference there. So it's like you start putting that together and then you can start planning your garden out appropriately. And it's really important that we know the days of maturity. And look, it's not written in stone. A lot of things need to be right. You need to have the fertilization, water, temperatures, and all that stuff. But once you start getting that under control, you can start to hit that, hit those goals and those marks for it. So make sure you're following that.
I was looking at working on some things. So again, some things are a little bit slower garden wise. So I'm playing around with a couple of things when it comes to how my next year's garden is going to come together. And I'm pretty sure that potatoes were something like May 20th was when the kind of earliest potential date to plant them. That's almost a month before my average first frost date. So average last frost date. So if you account for the growth time and when those plants are going to emerge, that's the whole thing. You don't want the actual leaves of the plants to freeze. Maybe I add a cover, maybe I don't. But if you look at something like, even if you go with the longer, potatoes, like longer season, that puts me in mid-July for harvesting, right? If you go with something that's shorter or mid, let's say 100 days, I'm at the end of June for harvesting. So young Ben is giving an example of he's pulling potatoes out in May, right? Yep. And I'm saying the earliest that I'm going to be pulling potatoes out probably, and again, if I do everything at the earliest time, is going to be June. And that matters when you talk about seeds you're buying and what your garden plan is and what you're planting, because now that space for me, I know it's opening up sometime in July, right? It could be earlier in July or later in July. So now what am I planting afterwards? And what is the days to harvest for that next thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And it's it makes a difference when you go, for instance, my potatoes, I pull them out in May. It's really getting to be a hard time to replant something. So, this year I kind of stretched it and I put a cover crop down and I was really happy with the outcome of that. So that'll be, my MO moving forward, to kind of keep that garden bed producing, keep it busy, keep it, rejuvenate it so I can replant it, all that good stuff. And it's just one of those things, the first year I planted potatoes, I had no clue how it was going to go down. And each year I've done it since, I've gotten a good sense of it, and I've had to adjust what I've done. But knowing those days to maturity or days to harvest, however you want to put it, makes a huge difference. And I bet if you close your eyes right now, if you're driving down the road, keep them open, and you think what are the days of maturity for my tomatoes? It's not that complicated when you think to yourself, when did I start harvesting tomatoes in my garden this year? It was July. Well, then there you go. You know that in that July time frame, you have this. But on the subject of tomatoes, are you going to go determinate or indeterminate? What is your goal? What works best for your area, right? We can't grow indeterminate tomatoes here. They don't do well. So we grow determinate tomatoes versus, Batavia, she could do both. And, a lot of people up north, they can do both. So it's just one of those things, but you start figuring out over time. And on the subject of tomatoes, if you live somewhere hot and you're not happy with your harvest, you probably are growing indeterminates. Try determinate. You'll see the difference. We've definitely, we got some, we put determinants in ours. I think we got an indeterminate too, but we put determinants and indeterminate in our shop because we wanted people to have both options. Yeah. Because it's not, it's one of those things where I've come after so many years, I've come to the conclusion I cannot grow an indeterminate tomato in my garden. Suck it up. Move on and deal with it. And there's plenty of other tomatoes out there.
Yeah, and that's tied to your weather, though, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's because of the humidity and the heat that kick in. And I've called it every year live on this show and on the YouTube networks and all that stuff. Mid-July, disease sets in. Watch and see. You don't believe me? Go look at my tomatoes. They set in. And I see it everywhere I go here. Everybody's like, my tomatoes didn't really produce this year. They gave up. And I'm like, what, they gave up about July 14th? Yeah, roughly in the middle of July. And it's like, yeah, because of the heat and the humidity and all that stuff. And it's one of those things. So when you're doing all this stuff and you're buying seeds, attempt to buy most of your seeds from the same place. It makes it a lot easier. But really what I suggest is buying and getting your seed order together. Let's say you're buying from 3 different places and getting them all at once so you can get everything in. You're always, look, there's always every year I'm like, I forgot to get this. I got to go get it, but you're going to pay a lot less if you buy a bulk of seeds. Look, you buy from us and, a certain amount, you get free shipping. You buy one package of seeds, you're going to end up paying $8, $9, $10 for one package of seeds, where it's almost not worth it in my mind, where it's like just buy 3-4 packs and, bring that shipping cost down. And it makes it easier because then you get them all and you can handle them. I typically, only time I will buy one pack of seeds at a time is if it's like an emergency. Yeah, and same. I've gotten to where I've almost will just not even worry about it. Just be like, you know what? Not this year.
Yeah, I get the impression though that some folks are, here's a shout out, a way to support the podcast, and I'll buy a pack, and we appreciate that as well. When we talk about this episode, this is like you're buying seeds that are going to help round out what you already have, or maybe you're starting anew, but for your next year's garden, right?
Absolutely.
So we think that you're probably going to be in a place where there are many more packets that you'll need to buy, and this goes back to the idea of doing that inventory, right? Comparing it to your list of what you want to grow. The idea of when something is going to be ready to harvest ties also into your method of harvesting and how that plant produces. So I'm a lover of Excel sheets. I've never met an Excel sheet that I didn't like, and most of them I love. And so I was toying around in the same way of the days to harvest calculations for some of the plants that I'll be growing. I also kind of made a notation of which ones are single harvest crops versus multiple harvests coming off of them, right? So most of our fruiting plants in the summer, you're harvesting multiple times, it's producing mini tomatoes, mini peppers, mini squash. Things in the cooler times, some of those things are the single harvest crops, right? Your broccoli for all intents and purposes, your cauliflower, your cabbage, and so on. And so when you talk about days to maturity, that matters depending on what you're harvesting and how. If you're doing some leafy green, are you harvesting the whole head like young Ben does depending on the time of year? Or are you doing a cut and come again like young Ben also does depending on the time of year? I never remember which season is you
in
do
the
which.
Spring, I take the whole head of lettuce. In the fall, I do the cut and come again.
Yeah. So as I sit here in fall and the spring, go ahead and get it out of the garden because there's something coming in behind it soon enough. And in the fall, it's probably one of the last things that I'd be growing in the space. So make it last. All right.
When we do our annual episode about the mistakes we made in our garden, if I don't say it remind me about lettuce.
Okay.
So I don't know if I'll remember or not, because I don't typically, when we do those, it's off the top of my head what's fresh. But that's something that I really need to focus on this year. But yeah, so there's all of that. But, I like to get, let me ask you this before we move on. If you are if you're buying your seeds, do you have a garden plan in mind, planned out before you buy your seeds? Or do you buy your seeds, just say, hey, this is what I want to grow, and then build your garden plan after that?
About the last 3 years, it's the garden plan in mind and then buying.
Yeah, I'm the opposite. I know what I want to grow, but then I design my plan off of what I want to grow. And I will say this, I think you're better off, because I always I forgot to plant my honeydew squash. I just ran out of space and time.
Well, yeah, are we saying, so I'm saying that I don't go to an online shop to make a purchase until I have these things settled, right? So what am I growing, and where am I growing it?
Yeah.
When am I growing it, right?
Yeah, I have, I'm at the point now where I understand the gist of how things are growing and stuff like that. So I don't have a plan in place when I buy my seeds. I typically get, and it comes from the years where you couldn't find some seeds. There was a lot of sellouts and stuff like that. So I'm kind of working around all of that. And I just buy my seeds, and then I look at them and I say, okay, where am I going to put these? And then I make my plan.
Yeah.
But now my plan doesn't change dramatically year after year either.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. We should do a count over the off season, a count of the number of different varieties that you're growing versus I'm growing. I'm thinking that I probably have the more quantity, and this is where people get all up in their haggles. But the question is, and since I'm posing, and I hope they're okay with it, is it quality though? Am I getting more quality, right? Just because I'm growing probably more quantity. The reason why when you said, hey, you could go in and just say, I know I need these seeds, because I think you're much more settled in, your garden will include these couple of handfuls of things.
Yeah.
You're not introducing as much new to your garden as I have been.
Right. And you've toned it down over the years.
Though?
I was going to say, you've toned it down a lot in the years. Mm-hmm. So, and I
had to go through all of that. And for me, I feel like I had to go through all of that to get to the point of okay, now I feel confident and comfortable with settling in on some of these things.
Yeah. And you go back and forth. Not you, but people in general go back and forth each year. Yeah. The last thing I want to say, I kind of alluded to it earlier, was once you start saving seeds, they don't go into these nice fancy paper packs that you have, and the organization gets a little jacked up. So it just, keep that in mind. When we sell our seeds, we give them in little plastic baggies. I like them because they're resealable. Mm-hmm. I hate spilling seeds in my pocket. I hate it more than anything. It makes me mad. I wish we weren't using plastic, but it just works better. But it's one of those things where it's once you get in there and you start saving seeds and you get all these different sizes and everything, it's tough, but you can deal with it. You can move through it, get yourself a label maker, whatever you need to do. And then eventually what you'll see if you're really into saving seeds is your seed box will end up changing over. It's like a changing of the guard, and it'll look completely different. And all these things are really important.
And personal too. Very
personal. Mm-hmm. Yeah, very personal. The whole thing is. So look, we've got two things to do here. One, so we're actually going to do 2 questions today, if you don't mind, Batavia. Good, I'm glad.
Let's do it.
One of them we don't even have to answer. So Wanda.
Hey, Wanda.
Look, she got the timing, everybody. She actually posed a question that we didn't even have to answer. It was awesome. She said, I struggle with cheating spacing on the planter app, and it feels like a wasted effort when I try to put everything in accurately and it won't be true to life. We all know spacing matters, but are we actually giving each pumpkin that much room? What is the best workaround? I purchased a lifetime on planter and I want to document my itty bitty garden the way it actually is. So I tagged the creator of it, Peter, and he comes back And he says, I didn't know this, Batavia, so now we're going to know for this. In the app, you can customize the spacing per plant or even per variety. So if you're like me and you plant tomatoes 1 per square foot, you can reflect that in the app, whereas it automatically comes up to 4 square feet per tomato. So it's really cool. The reason why I bring it up is because, the Planter app is a supporter of the show. We have a link below to get a discount on the membership, but the gentleman who created it is a gardener and creates it to help him garden, so it keeps getting updated. I didn't realize that was a new feature. I have to be honest, I haven't been in it hard, but it is that season for me. So I'm probably going to be building about 3 or 4 different plans soon. So just know that is an option in there. The Planter app, it's so visual that you can look at it and see where the plants are, but that was a question I had. For instance, my Seminole pumpkin, who is planted in 2 square feet and is taking up probably 200 to 300 square feet. And once it went over my trellis and out into the yard and everything, and it'd be kind of cool to design that and be able to reflect that. So know that you can do that. I think Batavia's over there trying it right now. She's trying it on her cell phone, whereas I like to use it on my computer. So check out the Planter app. It's on the Google and Apple Play Store. I said that wrong. The Apple and Google Play Store. Use the link below and get yourself a discount on the lifetime membership. It is a great app, and this is the season that we rely on it heavily, and all of this will play into each other. So you definitely want to try that out. You look like you got something to say.
Great question and great info. And that actually made me that quickly go in and explore a couple of other things that were kind of either default settings or settings that I made when I originally got on the app that I forgot were settings that could be changed. Yeah. So something as simple as like the variety name shows up on the plants in all of my garden plans. And I, at some point of the year, find that a little bit distracting because I can kind of, it doesn't matter that much. The paste tomato is shaped this way. The other tomatoes are shaped this way. I'm just trying to document the tomato. And I forgot that you could turn that off. And it's cool because at some point later, when I actually need to see, all right, what variety was that? I could easily just click it back on for a moment or for however long. So this is a good time to start exploring like how the Planter app can work for you individually at this particular planning time.
Yeah. I need to update it, and I usually do start on my tablet and then I move over to the computer and really fine tune it. So that's how I use it. Mm-hmm. Now, our next question comes from Samantha.
Hey, Samantha.
So she says, I'd love to hear about how y'all track from year to year. I know you use the app, but do you track yields, successes, and failures? It seems Batavia has some magical book where she can look back and see what was what. I need thoughts on how to do this.
Oh, that's such a good question. Dang it, I don't... All right, go, young Ben. I have to be able to restrain myself. You give your feedback, because I mean, that could be a whole episode, one of my favorite phrases now. Maybe not.
Yeah.
Oh, Samantha, you and I would be interested in. I don't know if everybody else would be.
I will say this. It's a little bit of a biased answer for me because we have the benefit of sitting here and talking for an hour straight, multiple times a week about it and doing YouTube channels. So it's like it's beaten into my head what I've done just year after year after year. So there is that aspect of it. And when you look at it, like it's a job for us. So I imagine for Batavia, it's almost the same way. Like, I mean, I have to remember how I did through the year so I can sit down at the end of the year and do episodes about the wins and losses and stuff like that. But with that in mind, I definitely can recall yields fairly well anyways. Maybe, it depends. I look at what I canned. I look at what I stored. We do stuff like that. So I can go in the pantry and say, look, I got, 50 Seminole pumpkins in here. We're good. Now, from the previous years before, I'd basically just go off of the past year, maybe two, and then go from there. And then the other thing I do is I mean, Instagram is your friend. You know, it's an organizational way to don't worry about followers, just worry about it so you can go back. Because if you look in your phone, I mean, look, there's pictures of like if I look in my phone, there's a picture of a wiring, like a radio that's wired. There's a picture of a cut on the top of my head I sent my wife. You know, it's like by the time I go and I look through to try and find all these things on my phone, I lose it. But when I go to something like the social media, like using it for something else, then it's more for me to kind of guide. So that's what I've been trying to do. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I don't typically write down books. I actually saw a friend of mine, he died in 2022. He had his friend had a farm. No, his dad had a farm, and he was in the process of selling the property. But his wife the other day had his old farmer's handbook that he had from like, I don't know, the 40s. And in that handbook, there was actually like, it was everything like costs, breakdowns, yields, everything that he had in this one notebook. And I've actually been looking to see if there was anything like that, because while it's good to have a notebook for it, it would be really good to be able to purchase one for a couple bucks that was like lettuce, yield, you know, and it was just like well organized so you could keep up with it. So I don't use anything like that. I just kind of go off my memory as best I can, but I also have the benefit of talking nonstop about it.
Alrighty. So I'm going to start with what I don't do, and I really want to. I want to track the yield, and the yield either in, depending on what the crop is, like a photo or pounds or both. But I've just not had the discipline to continue to do that. Like I'll start at some point, you know, calculating pounds, things that I harvest all at once, potatoes. I know how many pounds of potatoes I've grown each year, like that kind of thing. But that's a future version of me as a gardener. What I do, in addition to, as you mentioned, using the planter app for planning purposes at the start of the growing season. And because, again, I'm a lover of spreadsheets, I start with a spreadsheet, right? And last year was the year that I did this the best. I started with a spreadsheet because remember, I have the seed schedule from Young Ben. And so I know the dates that I'm going to be starting these seeds, and then I'm building on that. So seeds starting indoors, germination, I'm making a note of. And then I have planting separately noted, planting outside, like my aspired date to plant outside. Now, this is where kind of the collusion of things happen. Once I get to the point of planting outside, I'm using my phone to document because it's on me when I'm outside. So I have a note section. I'm an Apple user. That's what I got to say about that. I'm sure Androids have something similar to a note section. So I use my notes for like 2024 planting schedule. Like that's the title of it. That's what I go back to search on when I'm adding additional dates. So I'll have, you know, the vegetable, the date, you know, the quantity if I'm planting out multiple things, like how many pepper plants did I put out. And I keep that a separate one from year to year. And all throughout the season, and sometimes I wane it towards the end of the season, but all throughout the season, I'm adding to that, right? And noting what I am planting and when. Now, the part that I haven't completely fine-tuned, and this is where the combination of what Young Ben said comes in, time to harvest. So there's some things that I'm not as concerned about because I can see visually when it's going to happen. Things like tomatoes and when peppers ripen, like bell peppers. I'm a lover of sweet bell peppers, growing them. I use something like Instagram or Facebook where I've posted a picture of the first ripe tomato of the season. So I'll go back to put myself in check because I always feel like I'm behind. It's like, oh, these things are going slow this year. And I'll go back and say, nope, it's aligned with last year and the year before. So that's like a collusion of things. I don't use a notebook. OGs know. I'm like, I have an adversity. I mean, it's like...
No, you don't. Yeah. We all heard you crack the notebook for the first time on the air the other day. So no, not
well, it's
true.
still here though, and it's so pretty. I don't want to waste it. So that's one of those things of you have it, you don't want to use it, you're keeping it all pristine. So it's a combination of those things. I think document what you believe matters to you. I think it can be overwhelming to try to document everything, and I think that there's going to be a point in my season as a gardener where I'm not like writing anything down, because what I'm growing is going to be probably so fine-tuned. I know that there's going to be a time where I'm probably growing half as many things as I'm growing now. That could be 20, 25 years, and I'm okay with that.
I mean, here's a situation. We live in a digital world, right? But we're doing something that is anti-digital. Mm-hmm. It really and truly is. And I mean, I used to draw out my garden plans. I will say, using the app for the garden has been amazing. Truly is amazing. But, when it comes to doing something like this, I was thinking about it when we were talking, and it was like, okay, if I was going to do something like this, how am I going to do it? Well, I need to set up some kind of a weighing station, some way to weigh my harvest. Mm-hmm. And what are the chances of you being in your garden, weighing your potato harvest, and then coming in, firing up their computer or whatever, and then entering that in? So then I start thinking like, well, there's all kinds. I mean, like you said, create a spreadsheet, put a clipboard out at the weighing station, something like that. Mm-hmm. There is a slight chance Batavia and Leonard and I will have to sit back and talk about this. I think what would be more important, it's just like that farmer's book I saw. Ever since I saw it, I kind of fell in love with it. It would be really nice just to have a book that you could write down your expenses and your yields for each year in it. And I mean, look, you buy a book and it'll last you 20 years. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So it would be really cool, because one thing that gets lost in the mix is like, how much are we spending in our gardens? Mm-hmm. Fertilizer purchases, whatever you want to put into it. It would be really interesting to do that. So, I'm not saying this is going to happen, but maybe we could create something. I have to research that a little bit, but I think it would be really cool to, I've figured out a way quickly because you have to remember, I used to basically weigh fish for a living. So to create a weigh station, and then to have some way to track it next to it, I think would be a very useful tool. So we'll have to look into that. I don't know how that would work, but it would be really interesting to me. And I think what I'll do next year, or starting, when I start harvesting again, I'm going to start that process January 1. I want to weigh and track everything I brought into my garden, and have an actual record of it. So it's going to be interesting. Samantha, I appreciate you sending that question in. It is a great question. I'm a little scared on what I'm going to find out, though. I'm going to be totally honest. It worries me that when I sit back and I look at it and be like, well, I didn't get what I thought I was going to get or something. You know what I mean?
Well, I wanted to do that this year and it fell through pretty quickly. So I have a couple of ideas that we can kick around that. I think that information is power, like hard stop. And I think that if I look at something like, I'm extremely happy with my carrot harvest this year for the one planting of carrots that I did. And I have no idea how many pounds, and it doesn't matter, because in that case for carrots, visually, I'm looking at quantity as a thing, right? And so I think if we go into 2025 and I look at, okay, yeah, I want to weigh everything, I would weigh those carrots, and I probably would note somewhere the number of carrots if I'm growing all the same variety as an example. So, I mean, I think that's the challenge. Like, what are the points that matter? Because that's what you want to continually add to, and for me, if I get 60 carrots, I'm good. I don't even know how much 60 carrots could weigh. But I love the idea of this is the number of pounds, the hundreds of pounds of produce that I'm growing for my garden. I love that concept, because that does make it more relative to you as a gardener and others.
There you go. All right, everybody. Well, I think we have something we need to talk about. So thank you, Samantha. If you'd like to be Samantha, you can send us a a question through our email, bygquestion@gmail.com. Link is below for that. Or the Backyard Gardens Community Garden on Facebook page. You can definitely join that and be part of the crew. We'd love to see you there. Come check out our seeds down below. There's a link, and that code YBBB will get you some sort of discount. We haven't created it yet, but it'll be a good discount. And this is only for early seed buyers, so it will not continue through the spring. So get it while you can. Get that free shipping, get the planner app, and everybody have a beautiful day. And remember, on the Backyard Gardens podcast, we do one thing. We learn to grow, but we also grow for change.
See ya.
Now you know why people feel like celebrating at harvest time.
All over the world, people have feasting and good times when the crops have been gathered in.
Well, we hope you enjoyed the show, and thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to support the show, you can do so by checking out our seed shop below. We have all kinds of seeds available for you, and we're going to be adding new seeds shortly, so check that out. Get yourself some seeds. It's free shipping, over $35 orders. So go ahead, get a full garden. What are you waiting for? Order your seeds and stock up. Or you can become a subscriber. You can either be an Apple subscriber or a patron, and that will help support the show. You'll get one free episode every month, an extra episode, that is. So we definitely would love to see you over there and become part of our crew. Join the Backyard Gardens Community Garden in Facebook. That's free. Go ahead, join that, and join the community where all the listeners get together and they can help each other out with their trials and tribulations and just show off their gardens. There's not a better way to do it. And if you're curious about what's going on in our gardens, you can check out our individual YouTube channels. So I'm at Sandy Bottom Homestead, and Batavia is at Be Better Garden. You can check that out and see how each of us are growing and what we talk about on those, because a lot of times we will coincide with the podcast and help add information in that maybe we didn't get out in the show or we feel that's pertinent at a certain time of year. So check that out and enjoy seeing our gardens and what we do in them. And we have an Amazon store which has all the products that we use and recommend in our gardens, and it helps support our show. And we also add to this list periodically, so be sure to check it out periodically to see if there's anything that you need for your garden. Everything that you do, including a like and a subscribe and even a review, will help us learn to grow and grow for change.
See ya.